The stars had never looked so beautiful. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the front window of the Endeavour and watched as distant galaxies sparkled like diamonds against the black cloth of space. His crew worked quietly behind him, each person focused on their task. They had trained for this moment for 3 years. They had dreamed of it for even longer. Earth had finally done it. After decades of trying, humanity had built a ship that could travel faster than light. The Endeavour was small compared to the massive vessels they had seen in distant space, but it was theirs. It was proof that humans could reach beyond their tiny blue planet and touch the stars. Lieutenant Katie Price checked the navigation systems one more time. She was young, only 28 years old, but she had earned her place on this mission through hard work and skill. Beside her sat Ryan Brooks, the communications officer who would translate any alien languages they encountered. At the science station, Dr. Laura Bennett recorded everything she saw. Every piece of data could be an important dot in the center of the bridge. Ambassador Greg Patterson reviewed his notes for the 100th time. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, but those eyes still held hope. He had spent 40 years preparing for first contact. He had learned everything humanity knew about the alien species that ruled the galaxy. He had written a speech that would introduce Earth to the Galactic Council. The Council was a governing body made up of hundreds of alien species. They maintained peace across thousands of star systems. They had technology that made human achievements look like children's toys. And they had the power to protect Earth from the threats that lurked in the darkness of space. That one threat in particular had brought the Endeavour on this journey. The Varax Collective was an empire of insectoid creatures that conquered and enslaved every species they encountered. Their ships had been spotted near human space. Their scouts had already visited Earth's moon. Everyone knew what was coming. Earth needed help. Earth needed the Council. The Endeavour slowed as it approached Nexus Prime, the massive space station where the Council met. The station was larger than any city on Earth. It glowed with lights of every color. Ships of all shapes and sizes flew around it like insects around a hive. Jake guided the Endeavour into the docking bay that had been assigned to them. The ship looked tiny next to the alien vessels parked nearby. Some of those ships were bigger than aircraft carriers. Some had weapons that could destroy a planet. The crew put on their best uniforms. Ambassador Patterson straightened his tie. Katie took a deep breath. Ryan whispered a prayer. Dr. Bennett made sure her recording device was working. The airlock opened, and they stepped onto alien ground for the first time in human history. Alien species of every shape and size walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some floated in the air. Some had bodies made of crystal or metal or pure light. They all stopped to stare at the small group of humans walking toward the council chamber. Jake heard whispers in languages he did not understand. He saw looks of curiosity, confusion, and something that might have been discussed. He kept his face calm and his back straight. He would not show weakness. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of seats rose in a circle around a central platform. Each seat held a representative from a different species. At the highest point sat the High Council, the 5 most powerful beings in the galaxy. Their leader was Zethrix, a creature whose body was made of living crystal that shifted colors as he moved. Ambassador Patterson walked to the central platform. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Every eye in the chamber was on him. He began to speak. He told them about Earth. He told them about humanity's struggles and achievements. He told them about the art and music and love that made humans special. He told them about the children who looked up at the stars and dreamed of meeting new friends. Then he told them about the Varax. He explained that humanity was young and weak. He admitted that Earth could not defend itself against the Varax Collective. He asked, with humility and hope, for the Council to accept Earth as a member. He asked for protection. When he finished, silence filled the chamber. Then Zethryx began to laugh. The sound was like breaking glass. It echoed through the chamber and stabbed into the hearts of every human present. Other delegates joined in. The laughter grew louder and louder until it was a roar. A creature covered in silver scales spoke through his laughter. He called humans primitive and stupid. He said Earth was a backwater planet that the galaxy had never noticed and would never miss. He asked why the Council should waste resources on creatures who would be dead in a century anyway. Being made of purple gas said humans were insects. Insects arguing with gods. Insects begging for scraps from the table of their betters. Zethryx raised one crystalline hand, and the chamber fell silent. He looked down at Ambassador Patterson with eyes that held no warmth. He said that the Council had watched humanity for a long time. He said that humans were violent, primitive, and divided. He said that Earth had nothing to offer the galaxy. He said that the Varaks could have the planet if they wanted it. The Council did not care. He called for a vote. Every single delegate voted. Against Earth. Ambassador Patterson stood frozen on the platform. His hand shook. His voice failed him. The speech he had spent 40 years preparing had meant nothing. Katie Price felt tears burn in her eyes. Ryan Brooks looked at the floor in shame. Dr. Bennett kept recording, even though her heart was breaking. Jake Morrison watched it all from the edge of the chamber. His face showed nothing, but inside, a fire was burning. He looked at the aliens who laughed at his people. He looked at the Council that had abandoned them to die. He made a promise to himself. They would remember this day, and they would regret it. The walk back to the Endeavor was the longest of their lives. Aliens pointed and laughed as they passed. Some threw objects. One spat at Katie's feet. When they finally reached their ship and the airlock closed behind them, Ambassador Patterson collapsed into a chair. He looked older than ever. He looked broken. Jake put a hand on the old man's shoulder. He told him that this was not the end. He told him that Earth would find another way. He told him that humanity would survive. Patterson looked up with empty eyes. He asked how. Jake did not have an answer. Not yet. But as the Endeavor left Nexus Prime and headed back toward Earth, Jake stared at the stars and began to plan. The galaxy had rejected humanity. The Council had left them to die. Fine, he thought. We will save ourselves. And then we will show them what they should have feared all along. The sky turned black on a Tuesday morning. Samantha Cole was drinking coffee in her apartment in Denver when she heard the first screams. She ran to the window and looked up. What she saw would haunt her dreams forever. Thousands of ships filled the sky. They were ugly things, built from dark metal and covered with sharp edges. They blocked out the sun. They made a sound like 1 billion insects. Buzzing at once, the Varaks had arrived. The first bombs fell on New York. The city that never slept died in seconds. Towers that had stood for a century became dust. Millions of people vanished in fire and light. The Statue of Liberty melted like a candle in the heat of weapons that humanity could not understand. Within hours, every major city on Earth was burning. Samantha was a soldier. She had served in the army for 8 years. She had seen combat before, but nothing had prepared her for this. Nothing could prepare anyone for the end of the world. She gathered what supplies she could and headed for the mountains. The Varak ships focused on cities first. Rural areas might be safer for a while. She needed time to think, to plan, to find other survivors. The roads were chaos. Millions of people tried to flee at once. Cars crashed and burned. People fought each other for space, for food, for water. Samantha saw things that made her sick. She kept moving. 3 days later, she found the bunker. It was hidden deep in the Rocky Mountains. It had been built during the Cold War designed to survive nuclear attack. The military had upgraded it over the years. It had power, supplies, and communication equipment that still worked. She was not alone. Other soldiers had found the same bunker. They were broken and scared, but they were alive. They looked at Samantha with empty eyes and asked what they should do now. She did not know. But someone had to lead them. Someone had to try. Samantha Cole became the commander of what remained of humanity's resistance. The Voraks did not just destroy. They conquered. They enslaved. Their soldiers were terrible to see. They stood on 6 legs and had bodies covered in hard black shells. Their heads were shaped like insects, with huge eyes and jaws that could cut through steel. They communicated through clicks and hisses that sounded like nightmares. They rounded up survivors and put them in camps. The strongest were forced to work, building monuments to Vorak's victory. The weakest were taken away and never seen again. Rumors spread about what happened to them. No one wanted to know if the rumors were true, but some humans refused to give up. Tyler Grant was an engineer who had worked on the Endeavor's engines. He had been in Colorado when the invasion began, visiting his family. Now his family was gone, and he used his anger to fuel his work. He joined the resistance and began building weapons from whatever scraps they could find. Nathan Pierce was a tactical officer who had survived the destruction of his base in Texas. He walked for 2 weeks through burning wastelands to reach the mountains. He brought maps and intelligence and a mind that could see patterns in chaos. He became Samantha's right hand. Together, they fought. They hit Vorak's patrols and ran before reinforcements could arrive. They rescued prisoners and brought them to hidden camps. They gathered weapons, food, and hope, but they were losing. Every week, the Voraks pushed further. Every week, more humans died. The resistance was dying slowly, and everyone knew it. Then everything changed. A team of scouts found a crashed Vorak ship in the ruins of Chicago. It had been shot down during the invasion and lay half buried in rubble. The Voraks had not recovered it yet. Maybe they thought nothing of value remained. They were wrong. Dr. Scott Ellis led the team that studied the wreck. He had been an aerospace engineer before the war. He had dreamed of building ships that could travel to other planets. Now he used his skills to understand the technology of Earth's conquerors. What he found surprised him. The Vorak's technology was not more advanced than humanity's. It was different. Their power systems used principles that human scientists had never considered. Their weapons worked in ways that seemed like magic at first, but could be understood with study. And in some ways, the Vorak's technology was actually worse. Their computers were slow and simple. Their engines were powerful, but inefficient. Their weapons were strong, but had obvious weaknesses. The Voraks had conquered the galaxy not through genius, but through numbers and brutality. They had never needed to be clever. Humans were clever. Humans adapted. Humans learned. Tyler Grant worked with Dr. Ellis day and night. They combined human technology with Vorak systems. They built new engines that were faster than anything the Voraks had. They created weapons that could pierce Vorak's armor. They designed shields that could block Vorak's fire. Deep beneath the mountains, in factories hidden from Vorak sensors, the first hybrid ships took shape. They were ugly at first. They were held together with scraps and hope. But they flew. They fought. They killed Vorak soldiers. Samantha Cole watched the first test flight with tears in her eyes. For the first time since the invasion began, she allowed herself to feel hope. The resistance grew. Word spread through secret channels that humanity was building weapons that could hurt the enemy. Survivors who had hidden in fear found the courage to fight. Scientists and engineers who had fled the cities came to the mountains to join the effort. 1 year after the Voraks arrived, the resistance had an army. Small, desperate, and outnumbered, but an army nonetheless. They called themselves the Terran Defense Coalition. Their symbol was a phoenix rising from a burning earth. It meant that humanity would rise again from the ashes of its destruction. The Varax did not take the resistance seriously at first. Humans were insects to them. Insects could not hurt the Varax. Insects could only die. But more and more Varax patrols disappeared. More and more Varax bases went silent. The insects were biting back. Samantha Cole looked at her soldiers on the morning they launched their first major attack. They were tired and scared, and many would not survive the day. But they were standing. They were fighting. They were human. She told them that the galaxy had abandoned Earth. She told them that the Varax expected them to die quietly. She told them that they would prove everyone wrong. Today, she said, we showed them what humans can do. The soldiers cheered. The ships rose into the sky. The battle for Earth had begun, and somewhere in the darkness of space, the Galactic Council continued to ignore the little blue planet that was supposed to die. They did not know that something new was being born in the fire and blood of human suffering, something that would change the galaxy forever. The Battle of Snowpollo changed everything. Captain Daniel Hart had been a fighter pilot before the invasion. He had flown jets in training exercises and thought he understood combat. He was wrong. Nothing in his training prepared him for fighting aliens in ships that moved faster than thought. But he learned. All humans learned. They had no choice. His squadron flew the new hybrid fighters. The ships were small and fast, built from human steel and Varax technology. They did not look like much. The paint was scratched. The engines made strange sounds. The seats were uncomfortable, but they worked. The Varax carrier hung over the ruins of Snowpollo like a giant metal insect. It had been there for months, directing operations across South America. Its weapons had killed millions. Its soldiers had enslaved thousands more. Daniel received his orders from Commander Cole herself. Destroy the carrier. Show the Varax that humans could fight back. Show the world that hope was still alive. He led 20 fighters against a ship the size of a small city. The odds were impossible. Everyone knew that. Nobody cared. The Varax expected humans to attack the same way they always had. Direct charges. Simple weapons. Easy targets. They expected the insects to die like insects. They were surprised. Daniel's squadron did not charge. They attacked from multiple directions at once. They fired their weapons and disappeared before the Varax could respond. They hit the carrier's weak points, targeting the engines and weapon systems that Tyler Grant's team had identified. The Varax commander tried to adapt. But the Varax were not good at adapting. They had conquered the galaxy by doing the same things over and over. When something new happened, they did not know how to respond. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the carrier fell from the sky in flames. It crashed into the ocean and sank beneath the waves. Thousands of Varax soldiers died. Daniel lost 7 pilots. 7 brave men and women who would never see their families again. He mourned them. But he also celebrated. For the first time, humans had destroyed a major Varax ship. The news spread across the occupied territories. Survivors who had given up hope began to believe again. Resistance cells that had been hiding came out of the shadows. The Terran Defense Coalition grew larger every day, but Commander Cole knew that winning battles was not enough. They needed to win the war. For that, they needed to understand their enemy. Dr. Michelle Torres provided the key. She was a xenobiologist who had been captured during the invasion and forced to work in a Varax research facility. The Varax had wanted to understand human biology. They had experimented on prisoners. Michelle had been forced to watch. A resistance team rescued her 6 months later. She was thin and scarred and haunted by what she had seen. But her mind was still sharp. And she had learned things that the Varax never meant for humans to know. The Varax communicated through a hive network. Their brains were connected to a central signal that coordinated their actions. Individual Varaks were stupid. They could barely think for themselves. But when connected to the network, they became a perfect fighting force. Every soldier knew what every other soldier knew. Every ship moved in perfect coordination. If the network was disrupted, the Varaks would fall into chaos. Tyler Grant designed the device based on Michel's research. He called it the Whisper. It was small, about the size of a backpack. It sent out a signal that interfered with Varaks' brainwaves. When it was active, Varak soldiers could not think clearly. They could not communicate. They could not function. The first test of the Whisper happened at the Battle of Berlin. The city had been a major Varak stronghold for 2 years. Thousands of soldiers guarded it. Supply ships came and went every day. The resistance had never been able to touch it. Captain Hart led the assault. His pilots attacked the outer defenses while ground teams moved into the city. The Varaks responded with their usual efficiency. Then Nathan Pierce activated the Whisper. The effect was instant. Varak soldiers stopped moving. Some fell to the ground. Others began walking in circles. Some attacked each other. The perfect coordination that made them dangerous disappeared in seconds. The battle became a slaughter. Human soldiers moved through the streets, killing confused enemies who could not fight back. Varak's commanders screamed orders that no one could hear. Their weapons fired randomly, hitting their own troops as often as they hit humans. By sunset, Berlin was free. The victory was bigger than anyone had expected. The resistance captured weapons, supplies, and ships. They freed thousands of prisoners. They proved that the Varaks could be beaten on any battlefield. More importantly, they captured data. Varaks' computers held information about the entire collective. Maps of their territory, lists of their ships, reports on the species they had conquered, and something that made Commander Cole smile for the first time in months. The Varaks were afraid. Their reports spoke of the human resistance with confusion and fear. They did not understand how creatures they had dismissed as insects were fighting back so effectively. They requested reinforcements from the collective's homeworld. They admitted that the conquest of Earth was taking longer than expected. Samantha Cole shared the report with her commanders. She watched their faces change as they read the words. Tired soldiers found new energy. Broken spirits found new strength. The enemy was afraid. The enemy could be beaten. The Galactic Council continued to watch from afar. High Counselor Zethryx received reports about the situation on Earth. His advisors told him that the human resistance was growing stronger. They suggested that the Council might want to reconsider its position. Zethryx dismissed their concerns. He called the reports exaggerated. He said that the Varaks would crush the humans eventually. He said that a few lucky victories meant nothing. He was wrong. He would realize it soon. On Earth, Commander Cole gathered her forces. The liberation of Berlin had given them momentum. The Whisper technology had given them an advantage. The fear of the Varaks had given them confidence. It was time to stop defending. It was time to attack. She stood before her soldiers and spoke words that would be remembered for generations. She told them that they had proven themselves. She told them that the enemy was running scared. She told them that the galaxy had written humanity off as dead. Let us show them, she said, how wrong they were. The crowd roared. Ships prepared for launch. Soldiers checked their weapons. The rising had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. 3 years after the Varaks invasion began, the last alien ship fled Earth's atmosphere. Commander Samantha Cole stood in the ruins of New York and watched it go. The city around her was broken. Towers lay in rubble. Streets were covered in dust and ash. The ghosts of millions haunted every corner, but the sky was blue. The sun was shining, and Earth was free. Soldiers cheered around her. Some fell to their knees and wept. Others hugged each other and laughed. They had fought for 3 years. They had lost friends, family, and hope more times than they could count. But they had won. Cole did not celebrate. Not yet. The Vorax Collective still controlled dozens of star systems. Billions of creatures from other species still suffered under their claws. The Vorax would rebuild. They would return, unless someone stopped them, and the Galactic Council, the same council that had laughed at humanity's plea for help, still sat in their chamber on Nexus Prime. They still did nothing while innocent species died. They still pretended that the suffering of others was not their problem. Cole made a decision that would change history. Humanity would not wait for the Vorax to return. Humanity would not beg the Council for protection again. Humanity would take the fight to the stars. The Terran Defense Coalition had spent 3 years learning to build ships. They had factories now, real factories, not the hidden workshops where they had started. They had engineers who understood Vorax technology better than the Vorax themselves. They had soldiers who had been forged in the fire of impossible war. They built a fleet. Admiral Kevin Shaw commanded the flagship. They called it the Defiance. It was the largest ship humanity had ever created. Its engines could cross the galaxy in weeks. Its weapons could crack a planet. Its shields could stop anything the Vorax could throw at it, but it was not alone. 100 ships flew beside it. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, fighters. Each one built by human hands. Each one crewed by human hearts. Commander Cole stood on the bridge of the Defiance as the fleet prepared to leave Earth. Captain Hart commanded the fighter squadrons. Dr. Torres led the science team. Tyler Grant kept the engines running. Nathan Pierce coordinated tactics. They were the heroes who had saved Earth. Now they would save the galaxy. The target was Vorax Prime. The home world of the Collective was a dark planet covered in hives. Billions of Vorax lived there. Their queen ruled from a palace built on the bones of conquered species. Their fleet guarded the system with thousands of ships. No one had ever attacked Vorax Prime. No one had ever been crazy enough to try until now. The journey took 3 weeks. The fleet traveled through regions of space that humans had never seen. They passed stars of every color. They flew through nebulas that glowed like dreams. They saw wonders that no human eye had witnessed before. And then they arrived. The Vorax fleet moved to intercept them. Thousands of ships rose from the planet's surface. They outnumbered the human fleet 10 to 1. Admiral Shaw did not hesitate. He ordered the attack. The Battle of Vorax Prime was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species with access to communication technology watched as human ships charged into the swarm of enemies. The Council watched from Nexus Prime. The Kelmari watched. The Crystal Beings watched. Everyone watched. They expected to see humanity die. They were wrong. The human ships moved like nothing the King of the Galaxy had seen before. They were faster than Vorax vessels. They were more agile. Their weapons hit targets with perfect accuracy, while Vorax shots missed again and again. And then the Whisper-activated Dr. Torres had improved the technology. The new version was stronger, capable of disrupting the Hive network across an entire star system. When it turned on, the Vorax fleet fell into chaos. Ships crashed into each other. Weapons fired at random. Commanders gave orders that no one could follow. The perfect coordination that had made the Vorax unbeatable disappeared. Human pilots tore through the confused enemy. Captain Hart led his squadron against the largest Vorax carrier and destroyed it in minutes. Human soldiers landed on the planet's surface and fought their way toward the palace. The battle lasted 72 hours. When it ended, the Vorax Queen was dead. The Collective's government had fallen. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years had been broken by a species that most aliens had never heard of, the Vorax. Surrendered. News of the victory spread like fire. Species that had lived in fear for generations celebrated in the streets. Slaves on 100 worlds rose up against their weakened masters. The Vorax collective shattered into 1,000 pieces, and other species began to reach out to humanity. Bekelmari, who had called humans insects, sent messages begging for alliance. They were afraid. They had always followed the strong, and now humanity was stronger than anyone. They wanted to be on the winning side. Cole read their messages and felt nothing but contempt. She remembered their laughter in the council chamber. She remembered their insults. She could have ignored them, but she was better than them. Humanity was better than them. She accepted their alliance. She accepted alliances from a dozen other species who had been abandoned by the council. She built a coalition of the forgotten, the ignored, the left behind. And then she sent Ambassador Amy Lawson to Nexus Prime. Lawson was young, only 32 years old. She had been a junior aide during the first contact mission. She had stood in the council chamber and listened to the aliens laugh at her species. She had cried on the Endeavor as it flew back to a doomed Earth. Now she returned with a fleet at her back and a galaxy watching. The council chamber was different this time. The seats were not full of confident delegates. Many species had left to join humanity's coalition. Those who remained looked nervous, afraid. High Counselor Zethrix still sat in his high chair, but his crystal body seemed duller than before. His voice was weaker. He had watched the impossible happen. He had watched the insects rise. Lawson walked to the central platform. She did not beg. She did not plead. She carried herself like the representative of a great power, because that was what she was. She presented Earth's terms, full membership in the Galactic Council, reparations for the Council's failure to act during the Vorax invasion, the creation of a new defense agreement that would protect developing species from predatory empires. Zethrix tried to negotiate. He tried to stall. He tried to find some way to maintain the old order, but he had no power anymore. The Council had no power. They had stood aside while the galaxy burned. Now they had to face the consequences. The vote was unanimous. Every delegate supported Earth's terms. Humanity had won. Not just survival, not just revenge. True victory, and the reckoning had only just begun. The Grand Council chamber had never been so quiet. Ambassador Amy Lawson walked through the massive doors with calm steps. Her boots clicked against the polished floor. Behind her marched 4 Terran Marines in powered armor, their weapons ready but lowered. They were not here to fight. They were here to remind everyone who had won the war. The chamber that had once held hundreds of delegates was half empty now. Many species had left the Council to join humanity's coalition. Others had stayed home, afraid to face the new power in the galaxy. Only the oldest and proudest races remained in their seats. High Counselor Zethrix watched from his throne at the top of the chamber. His crystal body had once sparkled with light. Now it looked dull and cracked. The years since humanity's victory had not been kind to him. He had been forced to watch everything he believed in fall apart. Lawson reached the central platform and stopped. She looked up at the faces staring down at her. She recognized some of them. The Kelmari delegate who had called humans insects. The purple gas creature who had laughed at Ambassador Patterson. The silver-scaled being who had said Earth would not be missed. None of them were laughing now. She began to speak. She reminded them of the day, 5 years ago, when Ambassador Patterson had stood in this exact spot. She reminded them of his words about humanity's dreams and hopes. She reminded them of the laughter that had answered him. Some delegates looked away in shame. Others pretended not to hear. Zethrix sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the human woman who had come to deliver judgment. Lawson continued. She spoke of the invasion that followed, the billions who died, the cities that burned, the children who cried for help that never came. She described the years of war, the sacrifices, the endless struggle against an enemy that should have been unbeatable. And then she spoke of victory. She told them about the Battle of Varax Prime. She told them about the fall of the Collective. She told them about the dozens of species that humanity had freed from slavery. She told them about the coalition that now controlled more territory than the Council ever had. When she finished, silence filled the chamber. Zethric spoke. His voice was like wind through broken glass. He asked what humanity wanted. He asked why Lawson had come. He asked what the Council could possibly do to satisfy the species they had wronged. Lawson smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not friendly either. It was the smile of someone who held all the cards and knew it. She presented her terms. The same terms she had delivered weeks ago, but now with details that made the Council members shift in their seats. Earth would receive full voting rights on the Council, equal to the oldest species in the galaxy. The Council would pay reparations to humanity for 200 years, funds that would be used to rebuild Earth and help the species that the Varax had destroyed. A new defense agreement would be created that required the Council to protect any developing species from conquest, with human ships leading the defense fleet. And there was one more thing. The Council would issue a formal apology to humanity. That apology would be broadcast across every communication network in the galaxy. Every species would hear the Council admit that they had been wrong. Every creature would know that humanity had proven itself worthy of respect. Zethric bristled. His crystal body flickered with angry light. An apology was something that the Council had never given. It would destroy the image of power and wisdom that they had built over millennia, but he had no choice. The Kalmari delegates stood and spoke in support of the terms. Other delegates followed. Even those who had mocked humanity, the loudest, now agreed that the Council had no option but to accept. The vote was unanimous. As Lawson prepared to leave, Zethric called out to her. His voice was bitter, but there was something else in it too. Curiosity, perhaps. Or fear. He asked why. He asked why humans would help other species after everything the galaxy had done to them. He asked why they had not simply conquered everyone and taken their revenge. Lawson stopped. She turned to face the High Counselor. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she answered. She told him that humanity had learned something during the war. They had learned what it felt like to be alone, abandoned, and afraid. They had learned what it cost to fight for survival when no one would help. That pain could have made them cruel. It could have turned them into the next Varax. But humans had chosen a different path. They remembered the suffering. They remembered the loneliness. And they decided that no other species would ever feel that way if humans could prevent it. We are not better than you because we are stronger, Lawson said. We are better because we choose to be. She walked out of the chamber. The doors closed behind her, and the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence, trying to understand the species they had underestimated so badly. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Human ships patrolled the trade routes, protecting merchants from pirates. Human doctors worked on 100 worlds, healing species that had never seen such advanced medicine. Human engineers helped rebuild planets that the Varax had destroyed. The coalition grew. Species that had once feared each other learned to work together. Wars that had lasted centuries came to peaceful ends. Slaves on forgotten worlds were freed. And on Earth, a monument rose from the rebuilt streets of New York. It was a simple statue. It showed Ambassador Greg Patterson with his hand extended, just as he had stood in the council chamber so many years ago. His face showed hope and determination. His eyes looked toward the stars. At the base of the statue, words were carved into stone. They read, "They laughed at us. We answered with grace, fury, and an open hand. This is the human way. Captain Jake Morrison visited the monument every year. He was an old man now, his hair white and his step slow. But his eyes still burned with the same fire that had kept him going through the darkest days. He remembered the laughter. He remembered the shame of that first journey to Nexus Prime. He remembered his promise to make the galaxy regret its cruelty. But standing before Patterson's statue, he realized that the truth was more complicated than revenge. Humanity had not risen to prove the galaxy wrong. They had risen to prove themselves right. To prove that kindness was strength. To prove that forgiveness was not weakness. To prove that a species could suffer the worst and still choose to be good. The stars twinkled above the monument. Ships flew overhead, carrying humans and aliens to 1,000 destinations. Children played in the parks, some human and some not, laughing together without fear. Jake Morrison smiled. The galaxy had mocked Earth's plea. They had expected humanity to die quietly. Instead, humans had risen. And in rising, they had lifted everyone else up with them. This was the new order. This was the human legacy. And it would last forever.